Elaine cried anxiously, "Comrade police, I have already confessed. If half of what I said is false, I will be thundered." The policeman shouted angrily, "This is the police station, do you think it is a temple? Give me a swear to the heavens? I tell you. Hurry up and explain your upper family, next family, and accomplices, and link your organization's crime chain. Let me explain everything clearly." Now the International Criminal Police of 23 other countries require you to be taken back to the country for investigation. If you resist to the end, we will hand you over to the US police and let them take you to the US for interrogation. Let me tell you that the American police are very violent in law enforcement. They often use torture to extract confessions. Say it all for your own blessings. Elaine wailed in fright, "Police officer, I was really wronged. How can I go to my next home? I stole a bank card from my son-in-law, and then I was arrested here. Please. Don't hand me over to the American police." The police officer stood up and said to others, "The criminal Elaine has a rampant attitude. She refuses to explain the crimes of forging bank cards and transnational fraud. First, put her in the detention center and wait for further investigation." Elaine was frightened and cried, and went straight to the ground, and started to splash. "If I don't go to the detention center, you can't wrong the good people. If you wrong me, I will die with you." The police officer looked at Elaine, who was lying on the ground and reluctant to get up, and said coldly, "Put her up for me and close the detention center directly." "Yes." The others immediately set up Elaine like a dead pig, and it was useless for Elaine to cry for father and mother, and sent directly to the Orus Hill City Detention Center. There are 3 detention centers in Orus Hill, which specialize in administrative and criminal detention, as well as prisoners who have not yet been tried or have a short sentence. After the trial, prisoners with longer sentences are directly transferred to prison to serve their sentences. The 3 detention centers in Orus Hill perform their duties. One is dedicated to detaining male suspects, one is dedicated to detaining female suspects, and the other is dedicated to detaining juvenile detainees. After the 4 members of the Wilson family were arrested in the afternoon, they were sent to 2 detention centers. The old Mrs. Wilson and Wendy went to the women's detention center, while Noah and Harold went to the men's detention center. When she first entered the cell, Mrs. Wilson was still very uncomfortable. After being locked in, she sat on a simple bed, thinking about her experience during this time. During this period of time, it was the greatest catastrophe for Mrs. Wilson and the Wilson family. Mrs. Wilson's life's hard work and coffins were all sealed by the court, and her son refused to let her live in the Thompson villa, and called her to the police. Grasping the prison, these things made her think more and more angrily. Sitting cross-legged on the cot, thinking of the painful place, she slapped the bed in despair, crying loudly, "What a sin I have done, my family is bankrupt, my son doesn't support me, and my daughter-in-law has sent me to the detention center, this goddamn unfilial son. This is to make me die in the detention center." Wendy sat aside, also angry and sad, and cried and said, "Grandma, second uncle never used to be like this. He used to obey you and never dared to resist. Why is he so cruel now?" Old Mrs. Wilson coldly snorted, and said angrily, "It's not Elaine's vixen who suffered 1,000 swords. This vixen has been uneasy since she got married to our Wilson family. If it weren't for her to stop him this time, second uncle, I guess I agreed to let us live in." With that said, the Lady Wilson felt sad again, wiped a cloud of tears, and cried, "I'm really too faithful. When I go there and meet the old master, if he knows I was forced by my daughter-in-law dead, don't know how much he feels sorry for me." The grandfather and grandson were in the prison cell, mourning in their hearts and crying. Because the Lady Wilson is too old, the inmates in the same cell rarely see anyone who is still in the detention center at such an age, so they came to inquire curiously. Among them was a tall and strong middle-aged woman who had been squatting in this cell for 3 months. She was the boss of this cell. She walked up to her and asked, "Lady Wilson, is your daughter-in-law so bad? Put you in the detention center? What is going on? Yeah, what's the matter? Tell us about it?" When someone asked questions, other prisoners in the cell also gathered in front of Mrs. Wilson. They were originally a group of old ladies who love gossip, and their favorite gossip is the short stories of the parents, so they all hurriedly came to the front, pricked their ears, and waited to hear the following. At this time, Mrs. Wilson had nowhere to vent the evil fire that was holding her stomach. Hearing so many people coming to inquire, she cried and cried, "I tell you, my life is really bitter. My daughter-in-law is simply not human. She and her shameless rubbish son-in-law constantly framed us, made us a big family in Orus Hill with a big face, step by step pushing us to bankruptcy, let us owe a debt, even our house was taken away by the court." The fat woman said coldly, "Why is there such a bad person?" Old Mrs. Wilson flushed suddenly, and said angrily, "They are so bad, they are so bad. My grandchildren and I were driven out by the court to be homeless, but their family bought a Thompson first-class villa, worth more than $1 billion. Our family has nowhere to go, but their family of 4 sleeps in more than a dozen bedrooms.